The college basketball season is in full swing. Heck, I think even next Sunday we have March 1st, I believe it is. We are rapidly approaching March. Yeah, March 1st is next Sunday. So we got about a couple weeks left of the regular season. We're going to have conference tournaments. I think I saw 2 weeks from today, the A10 tournament will be kicking off. So a couple other conference tournaments will be in swing. We got a lot of big, meaningful basketball games coming up here as we approach March, obviously. And then maybe the greatest sports event on the calendar year with March Madness, just a few weeks away. I think it'll be 3 weeks from this Sunday, is Selection Sunday. So ton of important games, a lot of important headlines and stories to talk about. The college basketball report here on Beef Up Front. Ryan Coyle, Nick McClay. Nick, a lot of great games so far this week, a lot of big news, a lot to get into. How are we?
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of good games this weekend that really can, shape out the landscape of how, these conference tournaments are going to look. And then heading into March, it's coming up quick. These teams are going to have to find themselves. There are going to be teams sliding, teams rising up. And, every single year there's always a couple teams that sneak in there or get upset. So, this is why we watch. This is why we love March. March is one of the funnest times in the year for a sports fan. And, this weekend kind of just showed with a bunch of good games, and there's even better ones this weekend. So excited to get, kind of into it. And, as we get down the stretch, leaning more heavy towards, college basketball here.
Yeah, and we got a couple big games from this week that we'll break down, but I want to start off actually with some more kind of unfortunate news, I guess, with a couple key injuries just within the last week. Richie Saunders, BYU tore his ACL. His career at BYU is over. And then JT Toppin at Texas Tech probably was on track to be a first-team All-American. Texas Tech had just upset Arizona at Arizona over the weekend, giving them their second loss of the year. He tears his ACL the other night against Arizona State. Those are two key losses. Texas Tech, probably a team that had Final Four aspirations. BYU, maybe like a Final Four ceiling, but probably at least a second weekend team. In the grand scheme of things, Nick, what injury are you looking at as more impactful and how much limitations is both Texas Tech and BYU going to have without those two key guys going forward, do you think?
Yeah, I think the worst one would probably be JT Toppin, just with the amount of production. I know obviously Richie Saunders is unbelievable player. Coming from an Iowa State fan, he has absolutely torched us the last 2-3 seasons. So, I just think JT Toppin has more production in that Texas Tech offense. I know Christian Anderson obviously is a good player, but can he kind of carry, the hold of what JT Toppin did? I'm not sure. And with BYU, Richie Saunders goes down, you still have one of the greatest players in college basketball in AJ Devanza. So I think just with how much production JT brings to that Texas Tech offense and obviously defense, I think that's going to be more of a loss for Texas Tech than it is for Richie Saunders and BYU. I think heading into, this bracketology, as of now, Tech's looking like a 3 seed, BYU's looking like a 6 seed. So, I kind of wonder how these injuries change the outlook, from here on out after, two top guys in a system go down. So that's going to change a lot of the Big 12. I know there are two teams that aren't really at the top of the Big 12, obviously with Arizona, Houston, Iowa State, Kansas, like there are teams above them, but Texas Tech was right behind them, and BYU isn't too far either. So I think it kind of sucks to see, those two teams that were kind of just on that next tier of the Big 12 kind of go down with big injuries, because we could have seen them maybe make a jump. But I think right now it kind of does change the outlook of the Big 12.
Yeah, and Texas Tech just last weekend coming off a win over Arizona. We've seen BYU too hang with it and beat a lot of top teams in the country too. I think Toppin's injury definitely more meaningful in kind of the grand scheme of things. Like, can Texas Tech win a national title anymore? Definitely not. But I still think it's a very impactful loss with Richie Saunders going out, because the thing with that BYU team is very heavily reliant on Debanza, very heavily reliant on Rob Wright, but Richie Saunders was just in there as well. He was looking like a projected first-round pick, and he's a guy that's been in multiple tournaments before, leader kind of at that team. So two huge blows to what I think is the best conference in the country this year in the Big 12. Last year was the SEC. Some people might argue the Big 10 with Michigan and Illinois, what they've been able to do this season as well. But when you look at the Big 12, the depth of the league definitely takes a hit. Is anyone going to take BYU seriously with their lack of experience now? Texas Tech, I think they're still going to be a really solid team, a tough out because they're so well coached. Anderson's a really good player, but saw the other day they're one of the worst teams in terms of just bench minutes in the country. Now you're losing your best player and a first team All-American. That's a huge, massive blow, obviously. So the Big 12 takes a couple big hits there, but we had a great game on Monday night between Iowa State and Houston, one of probably top 5-10 games of the year. We've had a lot of really good basketball games this year, and that was one of the best we've seen. Nick, coming from your Iowa State perspective, were you surprised to see them pull that out? They were down 10 at one point. Houston has, and I think we can look at Houston, maybe say, what's the deal with them being able to close out games? You look at last year in the NCAA tournament in the championship against Florida. They had Iowa State on the ropes the other night, and Iowa State was able to come back and use that home court advantage. You worried about Houston in these close games and all, and kind of Iowa State too, long-winded question, but they've had some big wins over the past few seasons, but they haven't been able to go over the top and get to the Final Four. Is that a win, or is this a team that you think can do that this year, or do you think they're still going to find a way to fall short like Sweet 16, Elite 8?
Yeah, I mean, to touch on Houston, I still think that they're, an elite team overall, from offensively and defensively, one of the best coached teams in the entire country. I still think that they're in that tier. I know that obviously them closing out games has been an issue, but with this past week on Monday, I just think in Hilton, it's a tough place to go to, man. And I know you're up 10, so you should, end up winning that game, but things happen in college basketball and college sports when you're in home at your home place, and especially a place like Hilton. It's a different atmosphere, man. But I still think on the neutral site, I would take Houston almost over anyone. I think that defense and Kingston Flemings can just go out there and light up the score sheet. He can go out there, make difficult plays. I mean, there was that play in the corner early in the game where Tamin Lipsey and I believe Blake Buchanan had him cornered right in the corner, and he just dribbles out of it, tough shot over him, hand in his face like it was nothing. Like, he goes out there and makes NBA difficult shots. So I think Houston is still a team that has a guy like Kingston Flemings, and even, I mean, they're deep. They're always going to be deep, but they have a guy, and that's what you need in March. And then on Iowa State, I still think there's some things to tinker. That they're a great three-point shooting team, but when it's not falling, the offense looks flat. Obviously, one of the best defensive teams in the country, so I'm not going to say anything about the defense. They're an amazing defensive team. That they rebound the ball well, but the thing with them, they suck at free throws. Like, I don't really understand how Iowa State has recently played the last couple seasons, that they go to the free throw line and they're shooting like 67%. I think they're worst in the Big 12 in the free throw department. So I think they got to work on that. But yeah, I don't think that Houston loss really knocks them down, in my opinion. I still think they're in the elite of the elites in college basketball right now.
Yeah, I mean, even with the loss, I think I still come out of that game, not doubting Houston at all. And I'm not going to say it's a trend with them with the close games and struggling down the stretch, because all they've done is win the past few years. But in some big spots, they've let some leads escape. And is that something that happens to them again in the tournament? That's going to be something to keep an eye on. But I think even after losing that game the other night to Iowa State, Houston is still firmly right in the mix there for a national title contender. And I think the biggest thing that separates them from Iowa State is what you mentioned with Kingston Fleming, having a guy that you can give the ball to and go score. And Emmanuel Sharp, I think, can be that guy too. When you look at Iowa State, like Tamin Lipsey's obviously a really good player, but 10 seconds left on the shot clock, do you trust him to go get a basket? Are you going to rely on Milan unless it's a spot up jump shot or something to knock down a key shot or put the ball on the floor and get to the rim if he needed? I think when you look at Houston, they have two of those guys. You have guys like Senek in the front court. You have guys like Tugler. You have guys that are just tough, have played a lot of great defense, and have been there before. And I think the odds makers still are believing in that too. Houston's plus 750 to win the national title, fourth best according to DraftKings. You look at Iowa State; they're eighth, they're seventh at 14-1. So still firmly there in the mix, but I don't think people are fully bought in on them still as a Final Four team. Very home court reliant, and I think when they're in a bigger game on a neutral site, or you look at the Big 12 tournament or the NCAA tournament, obviously, they don't have that home court advantage behind them. What does it look like? Because a lot of reporters were at the game the other night, and they said that was one of the loudest, if not the loudest, they've ever heard that building. And that's something great you can use to your advantage. But like, you look at Kansas, the handful of past years. Like, I know they won the national title 3-4 years ago, but they've been able to win a lot of those big games at home. But they've struggled in the tournament. They've struggled away from their building. Once you get to a neutral site game, what do you look like? And I think Iowa State, that can be used against them. So it was an awesome matchup. There was another one last night. We didn't really get to tune into it, but a double overtime game between Arkansas and Alabama, two teams that can really put up points. And, Florida's sitting there at the top right now in the SEC, but kind of big picture wise, Nick, is there a team in the SEC that's sticking out to you that you're saying, maybe this team can make a run at the whole thing? We saw Arkansas last night. We saw Alabama last night. Auburn struggling. Kentucky has been up and down all year. It's been a lot different of a conference than it was last year, where I think there was 13 teams to the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, I think you touched on it last night. With that may have been the game of the year last night, and coming off a game of the year on Monday, we've had just a great week of games, and it's honestly only going to get better as we get closer to conference championship or tournaments. But yeah, after Florida, I really think only team I kind of trust is Arkansas, and I know they obviously lost that game last night, but Alabama's defense is just unbelievably bad. I know they can put up 120 a game, but if you're not able to do that in a tournament like we've seen, the last couple seasons, I think that trend kind of continues. I think Arkansas has the guys. Acuff is a guy that can go out there any given night, give you 30, rolls out of bed and gives you 30. So I think he's someone that can change. And obviously, LeBaron is still someone on Alabama that can go out there and score for you too. But I just think overall coaching too, I think I trust Arkansas over anyone else other than Florida in the SEC. I mean, Tennessee's right behind them. I don't think I really trust them either. Rick Barnes has never really gotten over the hump. That's his biggest, critique, I guess. Vanderbilt's still there, but they're always in some close games. And then Kentucky's just not the Kentucky team that, we're kind of used to seeing. So I think the only SEC team that I really look at is Arkansas, and obviously Bama, but right behind Florida, I think I'm looking Arkansas.
Yeah, I mean, Tennessee, they're not the same team that they've been over the past few seasons. No Ziegler anymore, no Dalton Connect from a couple of years back. Texas is a team that's been really surging recently. I'm starting to wonder if they're playing their best ball. Only 17-9, but they're 8-5 in the conference, and they've picked up a couple big wins, have won 5 games in a row. Vandy's a team that's been a little shaky recently, 21-5 overall, but they started out, I think, like 19-0 or something in that mix, 19-1 around there. What do they look like? They had a tough loss last night to Missouri, but still, the SEC, like we were looking at it, Florida, Alabama, Arkansas, Tennessee, Missouri, Texas, Vandy, A&M, Kentucky, Georgia, all still right there in the tournament mix, probably in as of today. Then you look at a team like Auburn, 14-12, 5-8, but they've got some big wins. If they go on a run here over the last few weeks, do they put themselves back in contention? They've been a major disappointment. They got some major talent. Mississippi State at 5-8. They're at 13-13. They're going to need a bunch of big wins here down the stretch, but it's still a deep conference, but I think not as good at the top as last year for sure. I mean, Florida is starting to surge. They've won 6 in a row, sitting there at 20-6 after a slower start, but they played a really tough schedule out the gate. But from there, it's a crapshoot, kind of like pick your poison. Do you trust Alabama, to go out and score 100 points because they're probably going to give up 90? Arkansas, what version of them shows up? Do they need Darius Acuff to go out there and have a 50-point game to win? Tennessee, what do they look like on a night-to-night basis? And then you kind of got that next tier of Mizzou, Texas, Vandy, A&M, and Kentucky, who probably has the highest NIL payroll in the entire country. In Georgia, too, is a team that started out really strong but has struggled as of lately. They won their last game, but they were dropping a couple in a row before that. So it's a much different SEC, I think, this year. But what we talked about to open up the show with the Big 12, with the major injuries that just suffered to Texas Tech and BYU, maybe the SEC kind of takes back over as the best conference, or hell, the ACC too. We haven't even talked about them. Duke's been great. I know Virginia is a team that you kind of want to talk on. Miami, hell, the turnaround that they've had, 21-5, 10-3 in the conference. Thoughts, so I guess, just on the ACC kind of big picture, because sitting here today, there's probably a chance one, two, three, four. There's probably about 8 teams that have a chance at the tournament, and I'd say at least 7 of those are in the field as of today, which is February 19th.
Yeah, I feel like we haven't really touched on ACC a lot. I mean, obviously you have Duke, and they're always going to be in the top of the mix, and rightfully so. That they look really good. But Virginia, I feel like we don't really talk about their win. I think they've won the last 7 games. They just don't really have too many eye-popping wins. Like they beat NC State, beat Louisville, and lost to UNC. So they beat Ohio State. So like nothing really jumps out. It's just they're a very solid team. And down the stretch, they have Miami up next, NC State, and Duke. So I guess they got some three tough games coming up. If they can get through those 3, I think it's worth talking about Virginia at the top. And can they make a run in March? I mean, only having 3 losses right now, that's something to really hang your hat on. And then right after it, Miami, NC State, Clemson, right behind Virginia and Duke in the ACC standings. I don't really think I've heard too much from Clemson either. North Carolina right after them, and Louisville. I mean, I feel like I've bet on Louisville so many times and just have never been on the right side of a Louisville bet. So I'm just not going to trust them. But they do. Like Mikael Brown can go out there and drop 40, just like we just talked about with Acuff. And that's what you need in March. You need a guy that can go out and score. And honestly, I wish I watched enough Virginia basketball to know if they do have a guy, but if they do have that guy that they can go to, I think that's a team in the ACC that we kind of have to keep their eyes on.
Yeah, and the ACC, I think, too, kind of is like a boom or bust conference when you're looking at the teams that could make the tournament. Like NC State, when they've played really well, they've played great. But then we saw what they played against Louisville just a couple weeks ago. And Louisville, they're the same. They can explode and put up over 100 points, but some games go out there, lay an egg. North Carolina, what are they going to look like when Caleb Wilson's back? Are they going to be able to right the ship a little bit? Hell, SMU's a team that's shown that they can be an explosive offense. But it's a conference that really, outside of Duke and I think Virginia as well, I mean, give Virginia the respect at 23-3, have won 7 in a row. Outside of Duke and Virginia, it's been a conference that's been really inconsistent. But some of those teams are definitely capable of making it to the second weekend. So ACC should have some eyes on them. We'll transfer over to the Big East now. Big East has a huge matchup on Saturday night. I believe first place potentially up for grabs as well. You got St. John's sitting there right now at first at 14-1, UConn at 14-2, and Villanova sitting at 12-3. Seton Hall, sitting there at 18-9, they're going to be a team that's one of those last kind of teams in the mix for a tournament spot, I think. Outside of that, we're probably looking at 4 bids at max in the Big East. It's St. John's conference to lose right now, but St. John's also will match up with UConn, I believe, next weekend as well, if not the week after. So we got Villanova, UConn on Saturday night in Philadelphia. A huge matchup there. Villanova wins that game. I believe they vault up into second place here in the Big East. And Kevin Willard pretty much locks in a spot for the tournament. Sitting there at 21-5, I'd probably put him at 99%. But hell, you lose a few games here down the stretch, you're not going to have a chance. And they don't have any wins against ranked teams. 0-3 against teams in the top 25. So huge opportunity. The biggest game of the Kevin Willard era. What are your thoughts on this matchup on Saturday night?
Yeah, I mean, this is a game to really show, the world who they are. I mean, they still haven't been ranked this season. They're 21-5. Like you touched on, they're 0-3 against top opponents, winners of their last 6. So if they can really get this going, and if they can shoot the ball well, they can 100% win this game. I know UConn obviously is one of the better teams in the country, one of the more explosive teams in the country, and they're always going to have guys. But this is a game where I feel like they kind of tend to let down. I think Nova in a spot in Philadelphia, I think that they can go out there, and if they go out there and shoot the ball well, like they have been doing, play some type of defense, they're one of the best rebounding teams in the entire country. If they can, continue to do that, win the glass, I think they can put up something against UConn and really, move themselves into second place. And then St. John's still, I think they have Creighton this weekend. I mean, that could be, a letdown spot too, but who knows? I still think St. John's is probably the better team, in this conference. I still think probably overall UConn is better than Villanova, but I still think this is a spot where Villanova can catch them off guard, I guess. What do you think on that game?
Yeah, I mean, Connecticut's coming into this one pissed off, losing last night to Creighton, but a huge spot here for Villanova. Like, obviously, they win this game, they'll be ranked, but kind of, I'm not saying Villanova's back if they win this game, but that's a game that gives the program and the new regime a lot more faith. And I don't think that these two teams have matched up yet this season. It might be a one and done type of scenario between oh no sorry 75-67 they lost at UConn on January 24th, but I remember that one was really close throughout. I think Nova was even up by 4 at halftime. That game went to overtime, so
Yeah.
Nova was an 11.5 point dog in that one. I assume that the line's not out yet, but my guess is probably going to be like 3.5 4 points in favor of UConn in this one. But I think UConn's coming into this game pissed off. Nova has a chance to get their key kind of resume building win, because even with that great record of 21-5, they're still not having a great seed. You're able to get a key win like this on the resume and maybe finish the rest of the Big East season undefeated and make a run to the title game or something. They could find themselves as like a 4 or 5 seed maybe at the end of the day. But this is a huge opportunity for them to get a win. You kind of touched on it. They're able to shoot the ball well. They're going to be right in it. But I don't think you want to be playing against a pissed off Dan Hurley team. They were 17-point favorites last night and lost at home outright to that Creighton team that's pretty mediocre. So I think UConn's going to find a way to go in there and win this one. But I think Nova's going to put up a really good fight. They had a potential letdown spot against Xavier the other night. We're able to squeak it out in overtime. All eyes definitely on this matchup, but I like Villanova to keep it close, but I do think UConn's going to win. So, like I said, probably 3.5 4 point spreads, my guess. I'll take Nova to cover, but UConn to win it at the end. Nova, just like Iowa State, a very poor free throw shooting team. If it comes down the stretch there, that could be something really
which is very weird for a Villanova team.
Yeah,
completely out of the norm for a Villanova team. But we got a great games this weekend, non-conference, Michigan, Duke, Illinois, UCLA. You have any read on either of these two games as non-conference games at this late in the year?
Yeah, I mean, Michigan's minus 2.5 now. Over-under is 148.5. It's looking like in that game. And then Houston's a 3.5 point favorite. Over-under 139.5. So two mega matchups there. The top 4 teams in the country squaring off, amongst each other. So that should be a really fun set of games back to back as well. If you remember last year, Duke and Illinois played in a similar game as Duke and Michigan, and Duke beat them by like 40 points. That's not even an exaggeration. So I think the big thing with Duke, they've had the size advantage down low with Boozer all year, but Michigan, they're able to throw 2 bodies at him that he probably hasn't seen this entire season. So let's see what Boozer looks like against 2 athletic big men in the front court, and Mara and Yaxel. And then as well, Michigan, they've just looked like a well-oiled machine. They had a couple, bad games in a row. They still found ways to win, and then they wound up losing that game to Wisconsin 91-88. But they squeaked out a game against Penn State. Even like a Washington kind of hung around against them. So in the middle of the season there, obviously it's normal to have a couple slip-ups. But, I mean, these guys just win by 20 and 30, it seems, every single night. I'm going to take this Michigan team. If it was at Duke, probably lean Duke. Another situation we talked about earlier with home court advantage. You put these two teams on a neutral, I think Michigan's a better team there. And then when you look at Arizona and Houston as well, Houston, huge game at home, coming off that Iowa State loss, and then on Monday they have to go to Kansas on Big Monday. What other spot would you want to? What spot in the country would you want to go to least? Potentially riding a 3-game losing streak. So I think it's a great opportunity for Houston at home here to right the ship. Arizona reeling a little bit, so I'm going to go with Houston to win on Saturday. I'm also going to go with Michigan. I'll take both of the favorites.
Yeah, I honestly think I'm right with you. I think just the way that Michigan has played and has kind of just been dismantling teams whenever they do win, it's impressive to watch. And obviously Duke is an unbelievable team as well, but you get it on a neutral site. I agree with you. I think if it is in Duke, I think I would lean Duke. But it being in a neutral site, I think I just lean kind of the overall better team, or the team that I think is just overall better. And then on the Houston Arizona game, I'm all over Houston. I think with obviously the injury to Kobe Pete, that's going to be big for Arizona. But Houston coming off a loss at home, I think they're going to be hungry, and obviously they got to get right before they head to Kansas. So this is not a time where they can kind of slip up, and I think this is where they kind of show that they're still at the top of the Big 12, not only the Big 12 but the entire country.
All right, before we wrap it up, we'll end it like this, kind of going forward. We'll go through Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the top games in college basketball. Quick little, 10-second each pick on those games. So I'll start off on Friday night. VCU traveling to St. Louis. St. Louis coming off their first loss of the year. St. Louis an 8.5-point favorite in that one. Nick, who do you like to win that game?
Yeah, I think I'm going with St. Louis. I kind of even would take them to cover that as well. I think they might win by double digits. I had VCU. I think it was last night. It was. I think they did cover, but they just didn't really look all that good. And then St. Louis coming off a loss, I think they might, want to try to prove something. So I think I'd go St. Louis there.
Yeah, I'm gonna ride with the Billikens as well, but potentially the hitting a little bit of a lull there. St. Louis, we'll see if they can get back on track, but I will take St. Louis to win that one. A huge one, Indiana rivalry between Indiana and Purdue. Purdue coming off a thumping from Michigan, and Indiana, a team on the 9 seed right, or on the 9 line right now, according to the most recent bracketology. Could use a huge win to potentially like lock in a tournament spot. Any chance the Hoosiers can go to Purdue and win?
I don't think so. I think this is a Purdue bounce back spot, especially, rivalry game in state. I think I'm going Purdue here.
All right. Yeah, I'm rolling with Purdue there as well. Miami of Ohio, finally ranked number 22 in the country, 26-0, 13-0 in the MAC. They host Bowling Green on Friday. Do they make it to 27-0?
Yeah, I think they do. I mean, just their schedule's so bad. Bowling Green is not a good team. Yeah, just give me Miami.
Really disappointing year by Ole Miss. Anytime a Chris
Yeah.
Beard's team is struggling like this, it makes you kind of raise your eyebrows. But Florida goes to Ole Miss on Saturday. Any chance that the Rebels pull off that upset?
No, I don't think so. Florida's just too good overall, and when they win big. So they're like Michigan. When they win by a lot. And Ole Miss just hasn't shown really anything this year. So I'm gonna go with Florida.
Creighton, up and down, inconsistent. They go to St. John's, who's playing some damn good basketball. Any chance we get an upset there?
No, not against St. John's. They're just a better team. Yeah, it's just St. John's, easy, simple for me.
Cincy traveling to number 8 Kansas. We didn't talk really about the Darren Peterson situation. Does he play in that one? And then Kansas has the quick turnaround on Monday night against Houston. Any chance that this is a look ahead spot for Kansas and they potentially fall to a Cincinnati team that's been getting some wins over the past few weeks?
I still think it's going to be Kansas. It's just impossible for really them to lose at home. But I mean, you touched on it. Like, I kind of want to get into Darren Peterson. As the season goes on, he's just continuing to do this. It's not really getting any better. Is he hurt? Does he just not like basketball? Is someone telling him this? Like, is an agent telling him to do this? Because like, can you feel like as good, talented as he is, he's one of the better players in college basketball. It's not a knock on his talent, but like, can you trust him to take it as a top pick? Like, is he going to come out and just not play? It kind of just seems like at this point, Bill Self starting to get, a little annoyed with it. I mean, there's not really much he can do. And you got to, trust guys as you get towards March. You got to trust the team. You got to, build, this camaraderie between your team and togetherness. And he's just kind of not showing up. Like you saw that clip last night, him hitting the 3 in front of Bill Self and immediately just asking him to come out of the game. So, like, what do NBA teams think of this? Is this going to take a knock on his draft stock? Who knows? But I just don't really understand what he kind of is doing.
Yeah, it's peculiar situation to say the least. I think Kansas wins, but I think Cincinnati's going to put a real scare into them. That's going to be one of those eye-opening games on Saturday where Cincy maybe has a chance to win it down the stretch, but Kansas pulls it out. Miami at Virginia, an awesome one between the second and third best teams right now in the ACC. Can Miami pull off that upset, or do you think Virginia gets it done at home?
And no, I think I'm gonna keep rolling with Virginia. Again, I don't know too much about them, but I just feel like we should start looking into what they're kind of doing right now in the SEC or in the ACC. So give me Virginia.
Give me the upset there. I'm going to take Miami to go to Virginia. Like you've been mentioning, not fully bought in on this Virginia team. Miami's tough. They're a scrappy squad. I think they have the pieces to potentially pull off this upset. So me upset there. Rivalry game, Tennessee going to number 19, Vandy. I like Tennessee to win that one as well. Vandy's been on a bit of a struggle bus lately. Tennessee, I think, needs a confidence boosting win, something that can give them some faith that they're not just going to be a one and done this year in the NCAA tournament. Thoughts on that upset?
I'm gonna go the opposite. I'm gonna go home team Vanderbilt. I think this is a time where they need to show something, where they need to, obviously just playing Missouri, barely beating Missouri. I think they need to show, the SEC that they if they want to be legit, they got to go out there and win this game, especially at home. So give me Vanderbilt at home on that one.
All right, Mizzou at number 20, Arkansas. Should be a fun game for people who like points and transition offense. I'm going to take Arkansas at home. That spread's already out, 10.5-point favorites. I do think Missouri keeps it close. Arkansas coming off a crazy double overtime game. Legs might be a little bit tired, slow starting out of the gate potentially. So I really like Missouri to keep it within that 10.5, but Arkansas to get the win at home.
Yeah, I agree. I like that Missouri to cover Arkansas win, especially I think Cal said Acuff was in a boot for a little bit
Yeah.
before the game. So I think you're right. I think there's going to be some heavy legs. And maybe, obviously, we like points for both these teams, maybe an under for this one, a typical under for an Arkansas game. So, but I would still go Arkansas outright.
All right. Next matchup, we go to Illinois, traveling to UCLA. Mick Cronin maybe on his last few weeks at UCLA. Any chance that they can right the ship, or do you think that's a team that's completely, kind of out of it now, and it seems like they're just ready to move on?
Yeah, I kind of think they're out of it. I think Illinois heavy, whatever that spread is, I might hammer Illinois in that one. I'm just not buying into to what UCLA is selling right now. So give me Illinois.
Yeah, I like Illinois big in that one too. Wrap up Saturday night. Your Cyclones traveling to BYU. We touched on it. BYU without Richie Saunders now, but Iowa State a 3.5-point favorite here, coming off that big win over Houston. Do you think this is a letdown spot?
I think it could very well be a letdown spot. I'm gonna hope that they just outright win. I would probably lean towards BYU covering since it is in BYU, but the Richie Saunders injury does make me. I was just gonna say make me happy, but no, that was disrespectful. But as an Iowa State fan, I'm glad that he's not playing. Obviously, they still have Rob Wright, AJ DeBanzit. That's going to be a handful. That does scare me. And if we can't, score, I don't really like our half court offense. We got to kind of run and score points when their defense isn't set. But I still think Iowa State is a better team overall. So give me them to win, but BYU probably to cover.
Yeah, I think I'm going to take actually the Cyclones in this one. I know it's potential letdown spot, but it's almost going to be a week by the time that's turned around. So give them some time to rest up. And BYU, what are they going to look like now without Richie Saunders? I think that's a huge piece that they're missing. Vegas to still have Iowa State favored in this one on the road. Kind of a telling line there for me. So give me the Cyclones actually on Saturday night, and then we'll go Sunday. 2 games in the Big Ten. Ohio State, a team firmly on the bubble, traveling to Michigan State, a team that got beat up last week by Wisconsin, but then just beat up UCLA on Wednesday. Another team that when they look good, they look really good, but they also have some games where they lay eggs. Any chance that Michigan State gets upset at home by this Ohio State team?
No, I think just with it being at home, I think this is Michigan State. I do think Ohio State's a good team. They can score, but I just think Michigan State, one, is overall the better team, and two, in the Breslin Center, I think Michigan State takes that.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Michigan State as well. And then to wrap it up on Sunday afternoon at 4 on FS1, Iowa 19-7, 9-6 in the Big Ten. At number 24, Wisconsin 18-8, 10-5 in the Big Ten. Wisconsin's been the team all year. Like they've got some of the best wins in the entire country, but have also looked really bad in some games as well. Key wins over just that beatdown over Michigan State just last weekend. They beat Ohio State earlier this season, who we talked about. It's a bubble team. They've beaten UCLA. They won at Michigan. It's a team that has some marquee wins, but has also been really inconsistent. Do you like them to pull off the win at home on Sunday, or do you think Iowa can pull off an upset there?
Yeah, I'm going with the home team again in this one. Just I think Iowa is a very good team, but I do think they're a little inconsistent. Obviously, so is Wisconsin. But again, this one being at home in Wisconsin, give me the home team in this one.
I will also take the Badgers in that one. Gave out picks for about what 10 games, 12 games there. Go back and track these, see what we wound up going. But thank you everyone for tuning in. Next week we're going to try and bring on a guest and do some bracketology talk as we really get into the bubble. Who needs to win games? What seeds looking like? And then preview some of the games of the weekend. So thank you everyone for tuning in. As always, like, subscribe, and we'll talk next week.